what was the thing that made you decide that you were going to make real estate investing happen for you?
That is a great question. And let me take a step back because there wasn't a single moment early on. There was a moment, but that wasn't until about 5 years ago. So the first 5 years of, my investing career, I was an accidental landlord and I was making it all up as I went. I did not have any idea that real estate could even be a career. No one in my family growing up, my parents, I had no role model that said you can work for yourself and live by investing in real estate. Didn't even know it. So I grew up in Austin, Texas. I graduated University of Texas, and society says you get a job, you have kids, you buy a house, you get a big girl job, all these things. And so I didn't do all of them, but I did do some of them. And I ended up buying a little condo in Austin that needed everything. It was $92,000 and I had 2 roommates. Wow. So I had my partner at the time, and then I had a Craigslist roommate. If that tells you how long ago this was, you were still like,
what year was that?
Like renting people. Yeah.
What year was it?
That was 2012. Okay. I started getting, we bought it in 2012 and got a roommate pretty much right away. Cause even after 2008 and the banks were being more conservative, but I don't know how they gave me this loan. Like, honestly, I did not qualify, but they did anyway. So I immediately was like, how do I get this mortgage like covered without any stress on me? So I got roommates. They were paying my mortgage, and we went on like that for like a couple of years. I mean, it was pretty sweet. And I was going along working my W-2. I had no idea that this was like a model. And then kind of a transitional moment, my partner and I split, and I knew that it would be crazy to sell the house, just being in Austin and, what was happening in that time frame, that emotionally I could not live there, and that I couldn't afford it to pay rent somewhere and have a mortgage. Mm-hmm. So in the span of 2 weeks, I went from living in my house that I'd been in for a few years to having tenants moving in. And like, I just made up the entire process. So it was accidental, and it was kind of like really forced and not a decision that I proactively made.
Yeah. Well, you timed the market with that purchase. I mean, 2012, everyone now says, if I could just go back to 2012 and buy. Do you still own that one?
I do not. No. 2016 came along and real estate. Oh, I'll get to it. But I quit my job and went to go travel for a year and travel the world. And so this is the power of real estate, right? I had some income coming in. It wasn't quite enough. I only had 3 rentals at that point because the first one was working out. Yeah. So I did it 2 more times in the next 2 years.
Nice.
Yeah. So I had roommates at the house I lived in and 2 long-term rentals that I had lived in prior, right? So 2016 comes along and I kind of say, forget everything. I'm going to go travel. I go travel the world. And I joke that I was like playing real life Monopoly because I was like, around month 8, 7, 8, I'm like getting low on funds. Like, I'll just sell a house. So I did. That's the condo. I sold the condo and I continued to travel.
Wow. What a blessing that turned into, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real estate's incredible.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I had a similar experience with one that I bought in 2012 as well, actually. Or no, I'm sorry. Okay. 2009. Yeah. Nice. It was in Hawaii because I just happened to be stationed there after the crash, and banks were kind of like freaking out and bought a foreclosure. And then, it was a huge blessing many years later after I got married when we could sell it and tap into some of that equity to do some other stuff. And it just, it's kind of how a lot of the times it works out. So, so you traveled for a year and then you came back and decided that you wanted to kind of double down on real estate. Is that how it worked out, or?
No, still no.
Okay.
No, I like at this point, I fully knew that real estate was awesome, but I didn't know that you could work for yourself and be a full-time investor. So I grew up in Austin, lived there until going to travel. I knew I didn't want to go back. And while traveling, I met my wife, and she didn't want to go back to where she had come from. So I was looking for a job. I was like, I need to get a job. And the job I got randomly was Columbus, Ohio. And I don't even think like I could have showed you where Ohio was on the map. I was like, sure. I mean, I just Googled like, LGBT friendly. It was like top of the list, and pet friendly, top of the list. And I'm like, it can't be that bad. So we moved here in 2017 without ever visiting or anything.
Wow.
It was a bold move, but it turned out great.
Yeah.
It's still here.
So what job were you working at the time then?
It was project management, working for a brewery.
Okay.
And I was opening their like commercial bars. So commercial property development.
I see. Okay.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It really was very fun. People all the time in their real estate journey talk about the golden handcuffs, where it's so hard to leave your W-2 because, they pay you all this money. I did not have that problem. I was working very, very hard and not getting paid nearly enough. So I made it about 18 months before this whole time I was going to my RIAs, to networking. This is the time when I realized real estate could be a career.
Okay.
So in that 18 months, the hamster wheel's turning, and I'm like figuring out, how am I going to do this? Take a wholesale course, figure like I could replace my W-2 income in like less than a deal a month. Like how hard could this be? Yeah. So I quit my job, did not make any money for 6 months. But the whole time, I knew once I got a taste of working for myself, like that was it.
Yeah. And so how did you decide when it was right to quit your job? Because that's a question I get a lot, and a lot of people are thinking about. Is there sort of a rule of thumb you go by that you advise people?
My timing, the timing was I was up for a review. I was asking for a very reasonable raise based on the tasks that I was doing, and they denied it. And so, I mean, it wasn't something, I didn't set a date on the calendar and aim towards that date or anything. It was that moment I realized the job was never going to be what I wanted it to be. And that the only way to create the life that I want is to do it for myself.
Yeah. That's a great idea. Sometimes the stars kind of align that way. One thing I was talking to people about recently is that I think people focus too much on their salary when they're trying to figure out how to get to financial freedom. And they're like, well, I'm making $150 a year now, so that's what I have to get to before I could leave. And while they're working toward that, then they're getting raises and stuff. And it's like this moving target that they're never going to get to, instead of saying, what does my ideal life look like? And what will that cost me, in getting to that number, instead of just assuming I need $150,000 a year, or whatever your number is currently to live off of. So it's sort of like a reverse engineering process, but you didn't have that problem since they were underpaying you anyway. So
I was so underpaid. Yeah. I was getting paid probably half of what I should have been.
Yeah. Wow.
So I was like, well, thank you. Yeah. Made it really easy.
So,
but I talk to people all the time who do have the golden handcuffs, and, it actually is hard to leave. And I kind of, give the same advice. And I think of this as far as like hiring someone as well. You think, I'm going to pay someone $60,000 a year. I need to have $60,000. It's like, you don't, because you need to pay them $5,000 a month. 3 months in, are they going to be bringing you in more than $5,000 a month? If the answer is yes, then you only need 10, 15,000 for that on-ramp. You know what I mean? Exactly. So same thing with the quitting your job. It's like, what's your on-ramp? If you need 6 months of savings in case you don't make any money, then get your 6 months and then start working. And you can plan month by month, exactly like you're saying.
And all of a sudden you have 40 plus hours of capacity a week to start to
Yes.
figure this out over that 6 months. Most people can, start to create some streams of income with all that time during that time period. So that's a great point.
And if you love real estate, I mean, I absolutely love what I do. And I imagine you love it as well.
Yeah.
And so I work more now, but it doesn't feel like work.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So that 40 hours a week, it's like, I have no problem getting up early. I have no problem like putting my head down and doing what I need to do.
Yeah. It's fun.
So if you have that in you, like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you left your job. You were focused primarily on wholesaling. It sounds like for the first little while there. Now you're known as the queen of BRRRRs. So how did the transition happen from wholesaling to this BRRRR model?
I was wholesaling everything for 2 full years.
Okay.
Because, I did have the real estate in Austin, and I was able to, I had a pretty decent profit from the condo that I sold. So I had some on-ramp for marketing. But I was saving 20% down to start buying rentals. Mm-hmm. So I also was making money for the first time in my life, and it was fun. So I probably should have bought more real estate early on, but I was like, let's make some money. Yeah. So I wholesaled everything for 2 years. And I did save enough to start buying some with the 20% down. And it was so slow. It was so slow. So it wasn't until January 2021. We had about 11 doors at that time. That's when I knew what the BRRRR method was, but no one sat down and really showed me the power of the method. So once I got a mentor, January 2021, who was like, you're doing way too much. Pick something, right? I was in Airbnb. I was an agent. I was wholesaling still. I had my couple rentals. I was doing everything. He said, pick a strategy. So I picked BRRRR, and from 11 doors, it has been less than 3 years, and we're just about to close number 70.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. So for people who aren't familiar with the BRRRR, I mean, most people probably have heard of that, but can you explain what it is and the power of the BRRRR method?
Yes. Yeah. I really wish someone had explained this to me sooner. So the power, so BRRRR, it stands for, it's BRRRR, buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. And the idea is that whatever you put into the property, you are able to pull out in the form of a loan at the time of refinance. You pay off yourself, your private, your hard money lender, whoever it is, and then that money's freed up to go and do the process again. So the power is that you are creating equity through your labor of, renovating this property, and you're creating an asset that's going to have very little maintenance because you have ideally new mechanicals, new cosmetics. You have a market rate tenant who is in theory well qualified because it's, a nice unit. You're not just taking anyone off the street. So you have a beautiful package to sell. You put your market rate, renter in place, and you take this beautiful package to the bank, and they're going to lend against your shiny new asset. And they're only going to lend 70, 75, 80%, depending who you work with. So the rest of the money there, between what it's worth and what you borrow, is your equity. It's your, your payment for all the work that you did.
That's amazing. Yeah. And so
it's brilliant.
So the one of the best parts about it is that you can just recycle then the same money. So, like you talked about, you don't have to save that 20% down payment because you're pulling out all the money once you refinance and just putting it into the next deal. So you can basically do this into perpetuity